So what are you willing to let go of or reprioritize or arrange things to create space for intentional time for self, for contemplation, for meditation, for some practices to kind of shoehorn into your life.
Welcome to Shaping Freedom with Lisan Basquiat, the podcast where we help you unlock your potential and redefine what it means to be free. I'm your host, Lisan Basquiat. I'm a former corporate executive, a life strategist, and the founder of Shaping Freedom. With a background spanning corporate, artistic, and personal development, I bring a unique perspective to empowering others. Listen in to discover inspiring stories and practical insights that will help you reclaim your life and rewrite your narrative. My intention is for you to gain the tools and motivation to be free in your relationships, your communities, and within yourself. This, my friends, is Shaping Freedom. In today's episode, I had the honor and privilege of having another conversation with Aaron Robinson, who's the founder of Opening Presence. He does breathwork and community building, and he's an incredible healer. We talked about three really important things, and I would hope that you'd grab a pen and paper and really pull up and be willing to be open to this conversation. One was we talked about how to actually get and create strategies for getting the results that you want out of your life. We also talked about how to create a self-love practice that works and helps you to show up more fully in your day-to-day experiences. And thirdly, and the topic that I loved the most, was we had a conversation about the importance of authenticity in our lives and how that helps to drive the positive results that you truly, truly want. So without further ado, here's my conversation with Aaron Robinson. I have Aaron Robinson on this week, and I'm welcoming you back. I enjoyed our conversation back in at the beginning of 2022, which seems like a lifetime ago, and also yesterday. And we decided to come back and have a follow-up conversation and check in. And well, welcome back, Aaron.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I appreciated our conversation so much a couple of years ago. And Aaron is up to a few things, and I'm going to have you kind of clarify it or share with folks what you're up to. But I know that you have a podcast, and you also are the founder of Opening Presence, which is I think an art collective. Is that?
So the art collective is called Flow State. Opening Presence is what I deem now the all-terrain vehicle for your healing journey, which encompasses the podcast, which encompasses somatic breathwork, ceremony, and meditation.
I wanted to check in with you because there is so much going on in the world, just as there was back then. And what I really wanted to lean into was the work that you do around helping men around self-care and self-acceptance and opening up to what's happening in the world. You do model that in such a beautiful and profound way. And I think it's something that's really needed right now is more conversation with more men, and especially men of color, to talk about how we're doing. So that's the conversation I want to lean into. But first, I want to finish up what I was saying so I get it out of my head. I had this little breakdown moment, and I had this conversation, and I am very grateful to have community and people that I can come to vulnerably. And as a person who is of service, it's very important to have that community and support system. And in diving into that conversation with him at 8:00 in the morning on Monday or Tuesday, what I found was what I thought was stress. And I felt I was really present to how much stress I felt in my body and fear, but I didn't know what it was. I couldn't put my finger on it. And I was like, I'm talking about burning out. And am I burning out? Like, what's going on? Like, why do I feel this way? So out of sorts. And what I came to was that it was grief
Mm,
through a series of questions and kind of like exploration and all of that. What I came to with him, Matt, was that what I was experiencing and labeling as stress, or, I just have a lot going on this summer and more than I thought was going to be going on, was grief and resistance, because there are some things happening in my life that are like big boulder things that I that are tied into the grief of some of grief and loss within my family, and specifically my brother and my father and my mother, and being this person who now stands here in the world where I am, um, with grown children and grandchildren and no parents. And so it was really kind of like, what does that look like when you consciously curate support and community and um, a soft place to land around yourself? And so that felt very good to get that out and to get clear about it. Um, and it really also opened up some thought this morning as I was thinking about this conversation around just that, because you do provide that to people, and you provide it, I think, mostly to men. And I'll have you talk more about what that looks like. Let's talk about, what do you do when you know that you need a soft place to land? How do you
yeah.
curate that for yourself?
Yeah. Well, first, for thank you for sharing that. I don't know that, like, what with you speaking, it just like touches me because these are the conversations that let us know that we're human and that we're
Mm-hmm.
walking that path in a genuine way. And I think largely like this whole like wellness community gets thrown around, and it's kind of for a uh, reasons that aren't not so clearly outlined. Like this is the work that everyone's avoiding,
Mm-hmm.
and the way that you're able to just step into that space. Like we haven't spoken in a number of years, but just the willingness to share is something that I cherish and value, with our relationship and then the people that I wish to serve. But this is like the language of the new earth. This is the way of relating that we're never really taught about. We don't have a lot of examples for it. It's scary, but it's truly the only way forward, to put all of our chips on the table and not try to alter them to someone else's way of perceiving things or how you interpret someone else perceiving things. It's like, here's my truth, but let me just like
Let me
shush it
just,
up a little bit just so you can internalize it in a way that, I don't know, is favorable for me, or
or
like
I think
allows
might be favorable. Yeah.
exactly, and just to put it out there as it is, and um allowing our friends, our family, our support system to show up in the ways that they can. Like I think there's a lot of us out here that have the capacity to hold space and to be that anchor. But we have to allow people to step into that role and give them the contents to show up in that way. And I think more people than not are willing to do that if we give them the opportunity by showcasing our vulnerability. Um, a little bit about the spaces that I curate and help lead, specifically with men, but also with all, like with women, all different
Mm-hmm.
gender identities. Like it's like everyone's welcome. It's like who wants to
Yeah.
show up? I think that's
Yeah.
kind of the thing. Like nobody's knocking down the door to see the mirror at all. Um, so I try to
It's
I try
hard
to like
work. It's
I've tried
simple,
to,
but
oh,
it's
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 like
tough work.
all that's required. I like I just have to show up and just be me. And I'm like, this is the best job in the world. But I
Yeah.
need people to come through the door in order to have
Yeah.
an exchange. And that's where a lot of my entrepreneurial like woes or just stress
Mm-hmm.
tension comes from, is like, yo, like y'all want to fucking build this thing, or are we just gonna like complain?
Oh, we're just going to
Um,
live in this and then, carry it until whenever and pass it to other
yeah, it's
people.
like
And are we
no,
going to keep this rolling, or are we
yeah,
going to stop it and take a look at it?
exactly, and that's the purpose of it. Yeah, is just consistency. I think people recognizing that this isn't just like a one-off thing. I think there's this one-offism in our culture of like, we're going to do this one-time event and it's going to be sponsored by this, and that. And then it's going to go away until it's another opportunity. But for me, I like to intentionally create consistency so people know that it's something that's forever. For as long as I'm
Hmm.
here, I'm going to be uh, dedicating my time, my energy into service in this type of way. With men specifically, I started a men's group with a couple of my friends who are also aligned in this mission and are dedicated to their spiritual practice. We just had our first one a couple of weeks ago and have our next one this next week. And ironically, the topic is grief, exploring grief. And that was something that came up in our first meeting we had at our studio, Flow State in Portland, Oregon. We had about 20 men show up. We just put it out there. We just posted a flyer, and 20 men showed up. And we went around the room and shared a lot about just kind of introductions, but then what are we moving through? And something that came up repeatedly was an emotionally unavailable father, like over and over again, just every single time. And I, myself included, I was like, yeah, like I don't even know who my dad is, even though he's standing right there in front of me. I'm like, who is this man? I guess it's like a tale of the times. Like, I guess they didn't have the resources or the willingness to kind of move through their blockages. And these are the things that we're tasked with today. With we just know too much just to stay um, in a prison of our own suffering. It's like we have uh, other people who are willing to go on this path, but it's important for us to seek out the solutions. Like we can't just wait around and then just take what we're given to numb the pain, to uh, distract ourselves from the grief, from the loneliness, the isolation. So yeah, the men's group is something that we're super excited about, and it's really one of those things where it's like, let's just see where it goes.
You know, um, I, one of the businesses that I own is a female-focused co-working space and business accelerator, her hub Carlsbad, here in San Diego, and I made the mistake with you that people often make with me, where I have an environment that is inclusive. Everyone's welcome. If you're looking for community, if you're looking for support as an entrepreneur, it's a place to come and be welcomed. Um, and I know that your work is not geared just towards men. So I'm glad that you clarified that, because the truth is that the more we all heal, those of us who can see the need, and not just see the need, but also be willing to take action toward it, the better off we all are. And those conversations have to happen in spaces where people are able to feel vulnerable and are able to unload, because so many of us did not have that for a variety of reasons. My hat's off, and for those folks who grew up in environments where the conversation around feelings and loss and emotions was part of kind of the dinner table. That
Mm-hmm.
wasn't me. And you and I are, of two different generations. That absolutely was not me. And um, I don't think that even the language of emotional availability was ever heard really until
Mm-hmm.
much, much later in my life. And it's looking back in retrospect where I'm like, oh, the focus was on survival. The focus was on, paying the bills and getting
Mm-hmm.
the life together. And it was very externally, it was, driven. It was about the image of and the satisfaction with having accomplished a beautiful home, beautiful car, beautiful, um, titles and all of that. And there was an emptiness on the
Mm,
inside. And looking at my parents today and looking at them today, seeing them at the age that they were when they were the age that I'm at now, I can see that. I can see how painful it must have been for them and
mm,
how there really wasn't a place that I'm aware of for them to take that and unload it outside of therapy or um, the more kind of traditional modes of healing and talking things through. So I think that your willingness to open those spaces and to do the work within yourself so that you can provide that space and support to other people is a wonderful thing. And being willing to be vulnerable enough to say, I'm willing to hold the space, y'all. Where are you? You know, come
mm.
in, you
Yeah,
know,
and
come
I
in
need
and
to
do
get
this work.
I need to get
You
a
won't
sign.
die. You won't die. You'll cry a little bit, but the crying, that release is so beautiful. But you have to be willing to have the courage to do it.
Yeah, I think the catalyst for feeling the emotions and like de-intellectualizing our narratives and just really allowing ourselves to express those suppressed emotions is the somatic breath work. It's such a uniquely qualified modality to reach us at a point and in a place that we often don't go. Like you said,
Mm-hmm.
specifically everything we're externalizing and we're dealing with the 3D and we're always reaching outward, but how can we reach inward to like the deepest depths? And we
Mm-hmm.
do that through the breath. It's the one thing that we do consciously and unconsciously. But to go on a journey within and to it's like you're going on a like a scuba diving mission on like a single breath, and then you go down to the depths, and then you like unlock something, and then there's like air in the chamber, and the
A
air comes
release.
out, and it comes out, and it's like, oh, like whether that's a deep sorrow or anger or even laughter and joy, a
Yeah.
lot of these suppressed emotions or these suppressed energies are just trapped in the body, and we have the opportunity to release those things and become lighter, mentally and physically, gain a better understanding of our stress response, our autonomic nervous system. So one of the main primary things that I get from doing breath work and offering it is just a little bit more control over uh, my nervous system regulation, like knowing
Mm.
what uh, triggers me and creating enough spaciousness within to deal with the same triggers, but in a way that is not dysregulating, that doesn't throw me off. Like the same thing that happened like years ago, whether that's like I smelled the perfume of an ex, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, and then be like, where's she at? Like and freak out. Like the
Mm-hmm.
same thing would happen. I'd be like, oh, that's nice. Like the nervous system doesn't completely ping pong off the walls and spiral. So we have a little bit more this feeling of safety within that we're able to create on our own by using the breath and yeah, express things that don't really have a place in society, or at least we don't
Mm-hmm.
feel like that there's a place for us to yell in deep anger, for our self betrayal or anything of that nature.
Let's talk about self-betrayal. What
Yes,
is that?
please.
What does that look like? There's like this idea that some of this work and some of this language, the language of energy, the language of trapped energy, that's kind of like this woo-woo thing that's over there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these modalities and these techniques and practices are very practical ways to deal with everyday issues. So I'd love for you to help and let's, together kind of bridge that gap so that people understand how this very important work and the topics of self-betrayal and those kind of things, how those play out on a
Hmm.
day-to-day basis to someone who maybe isn't as familiar with uh, these kind of practices.
For sure. Yeah. I think the first thing is just noticing the patterns of our lives.
Mm,
If we look back 10, 15, 20 years, like we go through so many of the same cycles over and over again, whether that's relating to ourselves or relating to others. Um, Hopefully that we're intentionally like putting energy into ourselves and growing and learning along the way, but largely like the core of who we've been is who we're going to be tomorrow. I think when we start to engage with our meditation practice consistently, with our breathwork practices, our yoga practices, contemplation, those are the areas and the opportunities that we have to create a little bit of space in our lives to observe and be a witness to the experience of this human body, and notice all the habits or the patterns that we find ourselves in. And sometimes some of those patterns aren't healthy for us, or they're not producing the results that we want in our lives. Um, I think with the knowledge, it's kind of like, all right, you now have choice. You have
mm,
choice now to show up differently, to exhibit different behaviors, to create a more favorable result that you prefer. Because I think that's kind of the root of like conscious creation, and that we can go down like a rabbit hole of that kind of thing, like working with the universe and manifestation and all these types of things. Um,
it's a thing. It's a real thing, but
for sure. And it's one of those things where you have to invest the time into
yeah.
it, because even myself, like I feel like I'm such like a lazy shaman. I'm just like I'm like, I know I got it, but then it was like, oh, the morning pages every single day. Oh no. Um, so the consistency is where all the beauty comes from, and like
Yeah.
the deep rooted like core of your practice. Like it's just like anything else. It's like a muscle, and you develop it over time. Um, and it's easier to make those strokes on the canvas like when you are consistent with it. But self sabotage, I feel like, is something like knowing better but not doing better. Like I still self sabotage all the time. There's certain things in my life where it doesn't feel like there's progress, but then other areas I'm like on the autobahn in Germany and I'm just swerving and I can drive and fly as fast as I want to. But there's
Hmm.
certain areas of life where um, I'm trying to approach it the same way that I do the things that are easy for me.
Mm,
And I'm like, yo, like, do I need like a mentor or a coach or someone to do, or a mom? Like, what is the thing that I need to move past these blockages that I have within that are preventing me from moving past these milestones or ways to support myself? So it's something that we're always working with, but I think the first thing is just having the awareness of um, what's working, what's not working, what we wish to change, or what we can kind of just allow to fall away as far as part of our identity.
my brain is ping ponging. I have like three different things, three different paths I want to go down. Um, but let's start here. So one of the things that you said is that, you mentioned the word results and it, triggers something, right? Because a lot of people, the question was around people don't, who maybe don't understand that these are actual practices that you can apply to your life. And I know that that word result is so loaded for people. They hear results and they're like, yeah, where are the results? Because we're such a result driven society. And what I also find is that while we're a very adult driven society, sometimes people aren't clear about the results that they actually like, what the result is. It's like results. as a way of getting into motion without necessarily sometimes being clear about where you're going.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you knew, if you took, taking the few things that you've talked about around, like looking at the different patterns in your life and what's happening, and then applying some practices that'll help you to see the reflection of your
Mm-hmm.
behaviors and how, the results that you're getting. Um, how do you pull all that together so that for a person who isn't in wellness as a day to day thing, how do you kind of create that formula that helps you to first be clear about
Mm-hmm.
what you want your results to actually be, and then get clear about what you need to do to actually get there.
Mm-hmm. Most
Um,
definitely.
I had I was watching a reel a couple of weeks ago, and it was Kanye, and he was ranting about his experience in the family with his ex-wife. And, it was like going on, and he's talking to a group of people. And at the end of it, at the very, very end of this clip, he says, and it's almost like in the middle of like, rah, 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 and this is going on, and that went on, and I'm a man, and I want to be treated like a man. And, and at the very, very end, he says, I think I just miss my father. And that hit me because there was all of that energy and talk and venting about these experiences. And the bottom line to it was really, I wish my father was here. It was like, I miss my father. I wish my father was here, something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that happens a lot in our lives where people want results and they want to feel better and they want to not be in a place of pain and struggle. Um, and we focus a lot on that feeling better when there's this, if we can get to that underlying thing, if we can just find that thing, that weed that needs to be plucked, it'll help us to get to first of all get clear about the place we could want to go, and then also be willing to be a little more vulnerable and courageous to do what needs to happen to extract that weed from our, the garden of our life.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a
Yeah.
question. I just wanted to share those two
Yeah,
things.
yeah. Yeah, I think it kind of highlights like when we are in those like lower ebbs in our lives, like to spend the time there, like actually be present with that energy and with that way of being. Cause like I'm like flying high most of the time. And then it's like it doesn't do a service to myself to like when I'm in these lower crevices of emotion or energy and not feeling quite aligned. Like that's prime territory to like look and see the landscape,
Mm.
like what are the weaves, what are they asking that I need right now that I'm not giving myself, or what are the fruits of my intentions that I've been putting out, like not letting that time go by for only riding like the high waves of it. Like even just like at our studio, we have like a wellness studio and it's an art collective, and it's just like a grind of trying to get people, like organization, and how do you build a heart-centered business with friends that is sustainable in a city where everybody's broke. Like there's so many different layers to it, but the
Everybody's
willingness.
not broke though, Aaron.
No, they're not.
Everybody's not broke. And even the term broke, but I won't get into that right now. But everyone's not broke. It's the key in business is to figure out what you're selling and who is willing and able to buy it.
For sure. In
You
that, I
know,
think that communication element of clarifying and finding the people, like, because essentially it's like, who wants a family? Who wants a community? Who wants to build? Who wants to create the new way? Um, I think our culture, just this generation, is very good at identifying what is wrong with the system and pointing the finger at the thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you say like, all right, what do you want to put in its place? Everyone gets really quiet and they don't
Yeah.
know what they actually want and what would be the better
Yes.
solution outside of just destroying the thing that's already there. I think
Right.
with flow state, with our creative workspace and wellness temple, it's like we're actively creating the new wave, whether that's just free donation based breathwork, sound healing, like cultural like experiences, events, like the whole nine, but it requires community to show up. And I think this society is like commodified even the language of community. Like Taco Bell has like community like on the window. Like everybody's
Mm-hmm.
using this word, but what does it actually mean? Getting a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of people in the same room does not mean community. Like what
Right.
is weaving everyone together? Like it can't just be the danishes and the coffee and hyped up talking about like, oh my god, this is great, da 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 da.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're here, I'm
Mm-hmm.
here, da 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 da. Like you can tell when you're in a room of networking and
That's what comes to mind. Yeah.
you're looking for what you can get from the other person, but you're not really
Mm-hmm.
connecting with the person. Something that we're seeing or that I'm like witnessing is it requires an exchange and it's reciprocity on the front end.
It must.
People these days are consuming community. Like they're going somewhere with a bunch of people to get something and they never consider what they're bringing to the table, what they're offering. And as someone that holds space for community, I don't choose what people offer. Like that's your decision to make. It can be financial, it can be energetic, it can be a nice compliment, it can be tools, resources. You can love budgeting and be like the accountant for whatever the thing is. Like you have to decide as someone who wants to be in community what you're going to bring to the table and support, and no one's going to get turned away for their offering. It's like that's the whole point, is that we all have these unique abilities, our gifts, our talents, our skills, our insights that we can come together and construct the way forward for everybody. But I think that's the education that we're going through right now is one, people understanding what it takes to be in community and that you can't just show up and take and go away. And then 6 months later, when you're sad and then everyone's having a
Come
potluck over
step
there,
back
you're like,
in.
oh, I'm going to
Right.
show up now. Like everyone's only showing up for like the party. But then
Yeah.
when it comes down to like building the house with like the foundation of it, like nobody wants to show up and get their hands dirty.
Yeah. What is your vision for this community that you're building that is currently maybe energetically not, there's not that mutual
We're close. We
synergistic.
we feel it.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
definitely shifting, as especially as like the weather's shifting and we're getting into fall,
Of
because
course.
everything's like
Yeah.
it's hard to compete with the sun. Like
It's
that's
very
very.
hard to
Oh
compete
my
with the
god.
sun. It's
Oh
like,
my
get
gosh.
up in here and do
Yeah,
blah, blah,
yeah,
blah. It's
yeah.
like,
They're like, nope,
but it's
absolutely not.
beautiful out.
Yeah,
But what is your vision? I'd love to hear that. I'd love
yeah.
to see that.
I think our vision is to have longevity, like to have something that's going to be here for the foreseeable future for 10, 20, 30 years. A place that exists outside of the transactional corporate model of what a wellness space is and what an artist collective that is self governing, that provides a safe space for people of all walks of life that we exist as right now. That doesn't turn people away for the clothes that they wear, how they express themselves, but then also carries itself with boundaries and integrity and not putting up with things that are not aligned to the core mission, whether there's societal pressures to conform in a specific way that doesn't align with our true inner knowing as practitioners and people that are committed to their spiritual path and the inner work. Um, yeah, but empowering the next generation to create what they want to see and what they want to experience by us doing it first. It's like, what do I
Mhm.
want to see? What do I want to experience? Where wellness and people taking responsibility for their energy, for themselves, for their health, um, constantly seeking solutions and collaboration with one another, um, like making that a lifestyle that is
Mhm.
sustainable and to the point where we're not reliant on government, to the point we're not reliant on uh, these things that are not serving us anymore.
Mhm.
And I think the thing is, it's like it takes time to figure out what those things that work. You have to do trial and error in order to understand what works for you. Like everyone
Yeah.
has like their own bio individuality. They have their own uh, traumas that they're working through or their own narrative of self that they're working through. But given the space to contemplate and to take full responsibility of this life that you have, um,
Mhm.
flow state is a space to do that kind of work and do like really nice potlucks and eat good food and listen to music and dance and play and all of that stuff. Like let the inner child
Yeah.
thrive.
And what do you want for like that if you had like a vision for or one of the experiences that you've had so far? Like, what do you want for that individual within the community? Because what you're providing is healing space
Mm-hmm.
and creative space and potlucks and that kind of thing, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
what do you want for the folks that come to belong to this community?
Yeah. I think I want people just to know that they're wanted, like their voice is wanted, their presence is wanted. It's not something that they have to earn and do something in order to be treated with kindness. Like you don't have to earn
Hmm.
kindness.
Hmm.
You have to earn respect, but on the front end, you don't have to earn kindness. We are in that space, like how we started off this conversation. We need that ability to connect with one another in an authentic way and to create the groundwork for someone to step into that and not run away from it and just know
Hmm.
that everything in their surroundings is nurturing their growth towards the vulnerability. That's like a core intention for sure.
And I think that there you're speaking the truth of and for so many people of all ages right now, where, we're in this very interesting chapter of our world history. And I've said that a thousand times. What we need is this is like a rebirthing, and we need to do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And where there has been, and I know certainly during my lifetime, professionally, there's been this like, work is about hustle and grind and push forward. And those things are so important because being an entrepreneur, that's some hard stuff, right? Like you have signed up for the hard work. It's so fulfilling. And it's not the easiest thing, because it's uncertain and you're trying to figure it out. And what does this look like? And you're testing and, experimenting and all of that. But in this world, with the way things are happening in the ways that people don't feel, I'd love for people to feel more safe. And the way to feel safe is in community. The way to feel more full and less fragmented on the inside is community.
Mm-hmm.
It's finding community. It's finding community that helps you to see yourself and that shows you how to self regulate and how to self soothe. And that is something that you are providing and something that you're providing very well and in a few different ways. I think that's the thing. I think people run away. I'd love to see people running toward opportunities to
Mm-hmm.
fix things because, like you said, it is so easy to point fingers and talk about like this is going on and that's going on and we had to inherit this, crappy ass world and the politics and all of that. That is easy. That is catcalling. that is sitting on the bleachers and watching the team play, sweating their ass off, while you have a latte and,
Hmm.
you know, and you're wearing
Hot
white
dog.
short, hot dog and latte, and you're just sitting back wearing a starter shirt talking about like, I would have, could have, should have, if I was
Hmm.
down there.
Hmm.
There's that. And there are a lot of folks who are in that mode of observation. And there are other things that happen when you actually get into the field. And so I
Hmm.
think that when you are feeling that anger and that angst about what's happening in the world, and if you don't want to or don't feel it within you to go to, these things to help the community and help the world, how about if you find a place like the spaces that you offer where you can do the work on yourself, where you can be heard? I think so many of us are feeling like we're not heard, we're not understood. And we can
Hmm.
talk about that all day, every day. But until you actually do the work, you never get to feel the relief of having
Hmm.
dove into what's happening within your own being.
I think a lot of the tension that people experience is just not living authentically, just knowing that
Oh, yeah.
there's this core truth that is within, but they've suppressed that in favor of the widely accepted copy and paste uh, reality of what is acceptable. Like when I'm out in the world, I'm just like, there's probably like 4 or 5 archetypes of person in Portland. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, I see the same energy, like the same vocal tonality, the same
Yeah.
cadence. Like if I'm at a coffee shop or just walking around, just listening to two people talk, and I'm just like, I've heard them before. Like I've
Hmm.
heard this before.
Different
I've
body,
seen this.
different, yeah,
Yeah, the
different face,
same
different
exact
name,
thing.
same thing.
And I think the majority of people, at least in America, are kind of like that. There's like everybody's hometown has like 4 different types of person, and they all just cycle through, and everyone, I think at I'm sure there's like a lot of comfort in the familiarity of it, but when nobody's taking a risk and everyone just kind of doing the same thing, wearing the same thing, like it has to get old at a certain point. There has to be something more, like to just try something new, to do something new, to like to speak your voice. Like that's the thing. It's like people are talking, they're chatting and talking about things that maybe will make them feel like they're connected to other people, but what is deep down that you've been afraid to say, that you've
Yeah.
been avoiding to say because you don't want to get canceled, you don't want to get ostracized by the people that are in your life? Like what's that controversial topic that you have been avoiding voicing because you don't want to
Yeah.
get fired or this or that? Like that's your truth.
Hmm.
And how do we invest more time into that
Yeah.
area? Hmm.
It does get old. It's interesting when you said that. I was like, yeah, it gets old. And it literally gets old because what happens is there are so many people who they see a person who's a few decades ahead of them. And when you're at that point, when you're where you're looking at people that are a few decades ahead of you, instead of saying that would never be me, maybe the question could be, what can I do today to help me to a few decades from now have a new reality,
Hmm.
have something different for myself, for my family? I think there's been a lot from one generation to the next of finger pointing as well, where it's like, my parents did blah, 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 or this happened when I was a child, or I wasn't understood, or whatever those things are. And then, unless you're willing to see human beings for who they are on the inside and to understand that sometimes that negative experience that we had was really the result of that person not taking care of themselves
Mm-hmm.
And it just came out. Those patterns came out in that particular way until we're willing to address what's right here in our own court. We're just going to continue to perpetuate those same things over and over. And yeah, they get old as heck. And what
Mm-hmm.
happens a lot of times is it gets old, the person gets older, and then they turn around and say, well, I'm going to let the young people figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, somebody has to stop and figure this shit out. And that's what you're doing.
That's what
You're
we're
like,
doing.
yes, yes. It's like, yes, thank you for saying that. That is what we're doing. It's like, hey, we're observing something in the world. We're observing pain and confusion and isolation and a fear of vulnerability. And those are all the doorways to opening up your life and being
Mm-hmm.
more present in your life. But you have to come and do the work. You have to come
Yeah, you have to
so
show
that you
up.
can get that support. You have to show up.
Yeah,
And it's not
that's
showing up for Aaron or for Lisan or for any other healers and folks who are focused on growth and healing and releasing. You're not doing it. Those folks that you're referring to are not coming to your community for you. They're coming to your, there has to be this exchange where they want something for you, but they also want something from you. And they're coming for themselves.
mm-hmm.
And I think once people understand that the healing is for yourself, it's not to do Aaron a solid or Lisan a solid. It's
Mm-hmm.
what's happening, what are the patterns that are happening in your life right now? What don't you like? What do you like? And we're here to support you to get to the next step in your
Mm-hmm.
process. Do you want it or not? That's really what it comes down to. Because if not, 30 years from now, they're going to be two other people talking about, you know, what happened in their lineage
Mm-hmm.
that screwed up and that now they have to fix.
Yeah. And it's never too late to start. I think that's something that gets lost in all of this. It's like if I miss the boat, like
Mm-hmm.
you can
Mm-mm.
start your meditation practice today.
You
Like
are the
there's
boat.
yes, yeah. And I think that's kind of my overarching philosophy around spiritual practice is just the willingness to start at square one over and over again. Like the path is like, whoa,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm still on it, but sometimes I like deviate and it's not pretty and it's not flowy and but it's still there. Like I'm still committed to it. I'm still on it. It's always going to have different uh, texture at different parts of your life, and seeing it evolve over time and just constantly engaging with it because you have to create the space for it in your life. Like everyone's like, oh, I'm so busy because you have full capacity, or at least what you perceive as full capacity. It's like you got to create space. So what
Mm-hmm.
are you willing to let go of or reprioritize or arrange things to create space for intentional time for self, for
Right.
contemplation, for meditation, for some practices to kind of shoehorn into your life, and just continually invest in that over time. And you have to change. Like it does, the work works on you. Like you don't get to choose like, all right, now I'm going to onboard these skills and these abilities. It's like they are innately like a part of you, and then they emerge through your own perspective and
Mm-hmm.
somatic awareness, and you're like, oh, like this is the upgrade. It's a felt experience. It's not something
Mm-hmm.
that you just become a better at speaking or whatever. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, like I can talk about the thing. It's like, no, it's a felt change in how you relate to the world, to yourself, and others.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that I feel like inspire continual like movement, not to be attached by the outcome, but just knowing from a firsthand experience that like this time, this energy spent on self and caring for oneself and loving oneself creates a change.
Yeah. What are the three benefits of doing this work? And by this work, I mean healing work, like diving into this is who I am, and I want to
Hmm.
do something different.
I think just living in my own truth, that's the number one thing because grew up I grew up in Carlsbad. Like I'm from Carlsbad. So you know the area, but there's not a lot of us around there. I didn't grow up with a lot of people that really like thought like me. I'm like an artist and an athlete and just like very eclectic, but there's nobody that I really like resonated with. So I was always stuck trying to like copy all the other white boys
Hmm.
around there and just like saying and doing the things that didn't really feel aligned with me. Um, so starting on this path and then like finding a passion for the work allowed me to unfold in real time and to just share with what is here like for me. Like I
Hmm.
don't want to compartmentalize parts of my personality um, for a specific person that I'm speaking to. It's like, yo, if I can't be my full self, then what am I doing here? Like that
Hmm.
means I'm hiding something. I don't want to
Hmm.
be hiding anything. I want to just say what I mean, how I feel. Thank God for podcasts. Um, so I think just stepping into authenticity and
Yeah.
just saying, you know what, I'm just gonna go with how the chips fall. And
Okay.
sometimes that means sacrificing a lot of things. Like there's things that have happened just because I'm existing this way, where I don't get the same rewards as someone that maybe bites their tongue and just punches the time card
Hmm.
or whatever. It's just like, oh, like
Yeah.
I've said and done things that were true to me that are not true to the organization, and
Hmm.
therefore I cannot be with the organization.
Right.
So those are the things that on this path, it's like, yeah, you're gonna take some L's, but in favor of your truth. The second thing, I guess, like the benefit of dedicating your life to service is finding others on the path as well, because it is pretty lonely out here when you lead with the heart and your intentions are aligned and you're like, no, this is it. Like, I swear this is it. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm sorry that it's not like popular. Um, but it's just what it is. But then when you find other people that speak the language, because largely I felt very isolated and alone,
Hmm.
speaking about these inner landscapes of energy and um, communication with God, the universe, nature, um, and just knowing that it is a relationship. And it's like, yo, like, and people that understand that as well. And I'm just like, oh my God, I'm not alone. Like other
Yeah.
people speak about uh yeah, just their own insights and just like the varying, like the vast levels of sensitivity to what is happening in the world and the ability to channel this like ancient cosmic wisdom. I feel like a third grader, like in all of this stuff. I'm just like, I'm so clunky with, and
and,
I
and
love
people don't
myself.
always
Yeah,
understand that.
I love myself
Yeah.
dearly, but I'm just like sometimes like the way that I speak about like esoteric wisdom,
Yeah.
it's always from just personal experience, not
Yeah.
from like a book or anything like that. And I'm
Hmm.
just like, oh, it's so clunky. But then some people are just straight channeling, and
Hmm.
I'm just like, it's beautiful. And I'm like, yep, that's the language of God right there. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of people out there that can tap into that and understand. And I think finding those people that you don't have to over explain things to, because it's like
Hmm.
when I'm on and I'm just going and just being a vessel, I'm like, I don't need to walk past and reiterate to certain people that understand and feel what I'm transmitting to them.
Or defend it
Yeah,
or
no,
have to
none of that.
justify.
Yeah, it's the truth. Like I'm not in the way of it. It's just flowing through
Yeah.
me. So yeah, finding others that are on the path, because it gives us like inspiration to continue, and realizing that there is progress in these larger landscapes, socio-political, economic landscapes. It's what are we focusing our attention on?
And if that's so important, I mean, there was a time in my life, and there have been times in my life where, something would happen and, I'd say, I don't know. everything is okay, or I'd have like a very positive perspective on something that's happening in the world that people are like beating
Mm-hmm.
down. And
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh, here you go with that,
Mm-hmm.
live in reality.
Mm-hmm.
No, my reality, in my world of reality, we can self actualize. We can take a look at what's happening here. We can clear things out. We can actually be joyful. What a concept.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where it was cute because I felt like I knew something and wanted other people to know it, but was okay. And then it gets exhausting. And it's so important to find people with whom you can say, I don't know. I walked by a plant the other day and I was like, wow, plant, thank you for
Mm-hmm.
communicating whatever it is that you communicated to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Community is so important, and not being in isolation. What's the third thing?
I don't know. Haven't even thought of this question before. I think it's embracing the unknown.
Mm-hmm,
Like the path isn't laid out, like it's creating the path and building it as we go.
mm-hmm,
And not using old systems to dictate what our next move is or what our next step is. Um, it is a lot of trust that is involved, and there's a lot of uncertainty and going through ebbs and flows of just like I don't know. Like I don't know what
mm-hmm.
happens, but I'm there on the front line to see if something comes into view, and then it's like, do we need to go towards that way, or do we need to orient a different path? But we're not stepping into this fully functioning assembly line and being like, all right, Aaron Robinson, number 7702, ready, go. And then stamp in through the
Yeah,
system. And
yeah.
like we're dictating like how we show up every single day, like learning as we go, like the type of interpersonal work that has occurred over the last like 5 6 months like has been astronomical. There's no like quantifiable evidence in the real world that says like, oh, you're a really good friend, or
Mm-hmm,
or like really understanding what like repair and conflict resolution entails, and you have to sit in the shit sometimes
mm-hmm,
of the discomfort and kind of own up to ways that we've been showing up in with the intention of repair too, because it's so much easier to just put a label on it and then run away and never come back, which I've seen a lot of over the last number of years of just like,
mm-hmm.
you did this thing, but I'm not going to have a conversation with you, and then I'm going to run the other way.
I'm going to set a
Um,
boundary and never
yeah,
speak to you
yeah,
again in
yeah. That's
life.
I do boundaries, and it's just like, how about
That's my
you?
boundary.
Yeah, let's address.
Let's
But
start talking, y'all. Let's have
yeah,
some conversations.
yeah,
Let's
and
work
it
this through.
sucks sometimes,
Yeah.
but just to see like the changes and learning how to work with people and seeing what people actually need, and not taking things so personally. And
Mm-hmm,
I think that's the work that everyone's avoiding. And when
mm-hmm,
we're in this journey of awakening, of stepping into more authenticity and truth and like honest relating with one another, it's so difficult. Like it's a lot of work, but you know that it's the right work.
yeah. So I'd love for you to share, as we're coming to close, I'd love for you to share for the person who is feeling isolated, feeling all this angst, but not comfortable sharing it anywhere, or they don't have any place to share it. Um, or the person who knows that there's something in their way, but they're not really clear about what it is or how to get through it. Um, from a self care and what would the opposite of self betrayal be?
Living your dreams.
Okay, from a living your dreams perspective, what are 3 tips that you have for that person for how to get started on this journey?
Mm. I think getting in nature is the first thing. Like giving yourself like time and space to just listen and to not have anything to do. And whether that's going to the mountains, if you're in San Diego, like going up to Big Bear or going out to Joshua Tree, just taking time for yourself and just knowing that like you're worth that time. You don't have to create excuses or explanations to other people why you need your alone time, and start,
That's a big one.
yeah,
That's a big
giving,
one.
yeah, just giving
Giving yourself
yourself,
permission to do what you need to do.
for sure. And yeah, not allowing the combative narrative of someone else's or prioritizing someone else's needs, like that is happening inside of your head. That's not
Hmm.
something that is respecting your own autonomy, that your own energy, your own spirit. So I think one, finding time in nature, going on walks.
And you
Um,
can do that wherever you live in on this planet. There is always a place to go. Even if you live in New York City, there are parks. Find nature. If it's
mhm,
not like sitting right outside your door, find nature and be willing to not do anything. It's
mhm,
scary at first, super scary because it's like, wait, let me scroll, let me, respond to this thing. Okay, I love
mhm.
that. What else?
Yeah. So I think that's kind of like the basis of like creating a self-love practice of
Mm-hmm.
doing things that are kind to
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, for ourselves, which kind of bleeds into a daily meditation practice. I'm always going to be that advocate because that's kind of where all of this started, was willingness to sit and see what is there
Mm-hmm.
every single day without any sort of judgment around it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do you create intimacy with your experience? I think we kind of get gaslit into thinking that it's selfish, and it's
Mm-hmm.
actually selfless. It's like, if I'm better within my relating to self, I'm better for the world, I'm better for you, and better for everyone in my family.
Yeah.
So I should actually be taking more time to myself in contemplation and removing distractions and figuring out what my own energy is and what ruminating thoughts are dominating my reality.
Mm-hmm.
So taking that time, in contemplation, um, pampering oneself, doing the yoga classes, um, drinking the water, the spring water specifically, um, and tapping into like this wealth of knowledge. Like, there's so many people that are, um, farther along the path that we can tap into their wisdom, and it will create more context to these new experiences that we're walking into as we gain this momentum on this path. So
Right.
listening to others who have walked the path that are far, far along or ascended. Um, and then one thing that I highly suggest is maybe with a group or with some friends doing the artist way. I think
Oh yeah.
that's like the most transformational journey that, um, one of the most transformational journeys I've ever been on was the artist way. It was a 12-week course to ignite the creativity within, where you do morning pages every day, which means writing in a notebook like 2 to 3 pages every single morning for 12 weeks, which brings up a lot of stuff. And
I have done that practice, the morning pages practice, for 25 years.
that is amazing. That's
And not
legendary.
every single morning, I have to say. There have been mornings where I haven't, and I have, like, chapters of my life. But I will
Mm-hmm.
say that whenever I'm feeling super wonky, it comes down to these things that you just listed.
Mm,
Whenever I'm, including the other day when I had my little, oh my God, my life doesn't make sense. It always comes down to, are you hydrating? Are you meditating, Lisan? Are you in nature? Are you taking walks? Are you connecting to something outside of the technology that's around you? Are you getting it out? Because that's what the morning pages and journaling does. It's
mm-hmm.
taking all this stuff and it's moving it energetically out of your being and
Mm-hmm.
allowing you to release it so that you can become observant, more observant of it.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk to you all day. What do you have coming up, and how can this audience support you? How can we support you?
Hmm. You can listen to Opening Presence with Aaron Robinson on all streaming platforms. If you are in Portland, Oregon, Flow State Collective is our arts collective wellness studio. It's a giant warehouse with tons of artists. You're more than welcome to come check out the space. Our Instagram is Flow State PDX. You'll find a bunch of stuff there with a bunch of amazing practitioners and artists. If you're interested in doing an online breathwork session, you can reach out to me directly via Instagram, Aaron Robinson, AARON, ROBINSON.
Do you do group
Yeah.
somatic breathwork sessions?
Yeah, we do group in
Okay.
person and online. I was thinking like your community, like Shaping Freedom community, we can do an online breathwork with everyone from around the
It would
world.
be great to do like a lounging with Lisan and
That'd be
have you
cool.
come on and do that. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Or I have some other ideas, but
Yes, we'll
okay.
hear. I'll listen to those.
I feel like we bounced around a lot of different things.
Yeah, that was a
Um,
journey
it was a bit of a journey, right? It's a little different than it was. I loved it. I think there was so much in the conversation that we had that I think is are important conversations and topics to explore. I want to thank you so much for being willing to come back and connect and say hello. And I always love talking to you so much, and you're so wise, and I'm really pulling up a long chair to see what you do with all of this, and where you go with it.
You're
Um,
invited. Come visit Portland. Pull
I
up.
will, I think
Pull up. Little vacay.
why not? That'd be fun. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Only if I have fun, only if I go up there to have fun.
Of
All right. Well, thank you so much, Aaron.
course.
I think people should stay tuned because I know my brain was popping off during this conversation. I think there are some things that we could absolutely and should do together. Things that I'd love for us to work on together.
For sure.
This is important work and beautiful work, and I think that as much as we're inviting other people to be in community, it's so important for us as those folks who are doing this work to be in community with each other
For
and
sure.
to hold each other up and collaborate and, you know, model what community looks like. And so, thank you.
Thank you.